Kevin Schmiegel. I'm the Executive Director of Hiring Our Heroes at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also a 20-year Marine veteran. I appreciate all the veterans out there joining us today, and today we have a very special panel, a very special program and career connections track of VetNet focused on a new initiative that Hiring Our Heroes launched this fall, and which we're building right now to help veterans transition from the military to the workforce, the civilian workforce. We're very fortunate today to have Jeff DeJesus join us. Jeff, why don't you come right on and introduce yourself, so I don't waste any time reading your bio, your resume.
Okay. I'm in the third year of my 4-year enlistment in the Air Force. I'll be getting out, kind of a tricky situation, but I'm slated to get out June 1st, and I'm trying to decide right now whether to accept a promotion and give the Air Force 6 more months of retainability, or to stay on my track and get out June 1st. So I've been, for the past, 8-10 months doing job research and trying to network and make as many contacts as possible in order to get out at my data separation time. But as you know, sometimes these things kind of drag out a little bit, and if you don't hear something, you start to panic a little bit, and kind of that's where I'm at right now. I'm not sure if I'm going to extend or stay on my track to get out on June 1st.
That's great. I'm going to chime in here and talk for a little while. If for the vets listening, a little bit about my background and why it's great to have Jeff on the panel today. Before I left the Marine Corps, I was in charge of enlisted assignments and retention for the Marine Corps. I used to travel around the country, around the world, trying to get young Marines like Jeff to re-enlist, to stay in the Marine Corps. The Marine Corps only keeps about 25% of its first-term force. So one out of every 4 Marines stay after their first term. That means 75% are leaving. So as I went around the country and around the world, I would talk to younger people largely about their decision to leave. I would thank them for their service, and I would say, hey, Marine, what are you going to do when you go now that you're leaving the Marine Corps? And the answer that I got, I would say 95% of the time was, sir, to be honest, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just tired. I'm going to go home, and I'll figure it out when I get there. That is not a good plan. And as people are deciding what they're going to do after the service, we believe that geography drives a lot of their decision. I think as Jeff is probably looking himself, he's thinking about where to go. A lot of younger people who are leaving the military, a lot of military families try to go back to where they have a support network. In fact, studies show that 80% go back to their hometowns or their wives' hometowns or their husbands' hometowns, or they stay in and around the bases and stations that they separate from. This is a critical point because if you look across the Department of Defense, if you look across the other government agencies like the VA and the Department of Labor, the tools they have for military personnel who are leaving, and even in the private and nonprofit sector, are focused on MOS translation. And it's not focused on what really is driving their decision-making process, which is geography and then what it is I want to do. A lot of people that serve in the military don't want to do the same thing they did in the military. So a lot of tools that are out there on the government side, on the nonprofit side, even on the private sector side, focus on MOS. So if you were to go to the National Resource Directory or the VA site for veterans, there's a veterans job bank. And I did a little test based on my experiences as a Marine as I ran this program and thought about the things that we should do. And what I found was we did a search on the veterans job bank, and I plugged in 0311, which is an infantryman in the Marine Corps, or 11 Bravo in the Army. And then I plugged in the city of Columbus, Ohio, just randomly. And what I got was very disturbing. I got a 0 search result. Why is that? Because when they code a system like that and you have job boards that focus on MOS, they focus on the skills that you learn in the military. So there weren't any security jobs in Columbus. Well, why do we have an infantryman or someone with Jeff's skills in the Air Force who may want to do different things, focus just on what they did in the military? Same thing goes for a truck driver. Not everyone that drives a truck wants to drive a truck, get a CDL and drive a truck in the private sector. I think it's critical that we point younger people who are leaving the military, like Jeff, to where the jobs are and what industries are hiring, so they can make an informed decision about their transition, about their second careers, and not a decision of the heart. I went back on that job site, the Veterans Job Bank, a couple of weeks ago, and I did the same exercise. I plugged in 0311, and I plugged in 11 Bravo, I plugged in Columbus, Ohio. I had two options: security guard positions in Columbus and to go back in the Guard and Reserves. That is not what we should be telling an infantry squad leader who served in Afghanistan, 2 tours, helped rebuild schools, spoke to tribal leaders, managed 13 men. I was accountable for millions of dollars worth of equipment. That is not right, and we need to start pointing them to where the jobs are and who's hiring. So Hiring Our Heroes has developed a program, and Jeff, don't fall asleep on me. We've developed a program called Fast Track. I'd like to call that up on the screen real quick, and then we'll get to Jeff to talk a little bit about some of the things that he can consider. This is very simple. It was designed and thought of by a Marine, so we kept it as simple as possible. We went out and looked at a bunch of data, a bunch of studies and surveys, and all we wanted to do was say, okay, if we have 1 million men and women getting ready to leave the military over the next 5 years, they have a relocation allowance, they have a GI Bill, what do we want to point them to? Well, we want to point them to high-skilled jobs, good-paying jobs, in industries that have huge demands. President Obama himself, in his State of the Union address in 2012, and I'm sure he's going to say something very similar in 2013, he said that there were 2 million jobs in America that aren't being filled right now because we lack a trained workforce. But what better jobs to be filled than with veterans and transitioning service members, and for that matter, military spouses? We need to look at the cities in America that are growing. So we looked at these studies, and we found the 100 cities in America that are growing the fastest in terms of job growth. We don't want to focus on 400 cities or 1,000 cities. We don't want to populate an entire map. We want to focus on the 100 cities that we know are growing rapidly because of economic prosperity. And then we want to populate that map with job opportunities in industries that are growing. Why point someone to Columbus, Ohio, or Austin, or Houston, and have them look at an industry that's not growing? Let's point them to those cities, but specifically at the industries that have a demand for skilled labor, and offer the opportunities to use your GI Bill for 6 months to get a certification or a license or a credential or work in an apprenticeship program. You don't have to go to a 2-year degree program. You don't have to go to a 4-year degree program. What we would like to see is young men and women leaving the military, or veterans who have recently transitioned, or for that matter, folks who have had a real tough time with employment over time, to use this mapping tool to find the industries, use their GI Bill benefit wisely to get a good paying job, and then go to school at night or on the weekends, and then get their associate's degree and bachelor's degree and work their way up the corporate ladder. So this map that we've built, and I'd like to get Jeff's feedback on it, is very simple. You click on a city. When you click on the city, it actually uses the Veterans Job Bank from the VA. So we're working with the government to do this. Every time an employer posts a job that's military friendly, it will populate the Veterans Job Bank. So if someone has an MOS and they want to do something like that in the military, then they can use the Veterans Job Bank. But if they want to go back to a state where they grew up in, we're going to point them to the cities that are growing. Look at Texas. Let's go to Texas on the map. Very simple. You look at Texas right now. If you grew up in Midland, Texas, which is in the western part of the state, or Amarillo, you may find double-digit unemployment. I don't know what the facts are, but you don't see them as the circles on that map. We don't want someone going back to Midland when there's double-digit unemployment. I don't care if they grew up with their family there. What we want them to do is to see that Dallas and Austin and San Antonio and Houston are growing. And guess what? It might be a better plan to live a few hundred miles away from your home in Midland, Texas, and find a job in Dallas and Fort Worth and go home on the weekends. Because some of the reason they may have left Midland in the first place was that they weren't getting along with their family and wanted to get the hell out of Midland. So we want them to make an informed decision. And the fact is, if you look at a city like Dallas, Austin, Houston, San Antonio, and that part of Texas, you'll probably find a lot of energy jobs. I'm pretty sure you will. You'll also find a lot of infrastructure jobs, building and construction jobs. You'll also find a lot of healthcare jobs. There are industries in America that are growing, and we need to point veterans to those jobs. So I'm going to open it up to Jeff to see if he's got any feedback, whether or not he's looking at geography. I know I've asked Jeff to be on mute, so I'll remind him to jump off of it because I'm notorious for staying on mute. So.
All right, I'm off mute now. I took a look at this map last night, and I really liked it because the 4 areas that I'm looking at right now are Florida, Virginia, mainly in Charlottesville, and the Northern Virginia area, and also Metro DC. And I clicked on, let's see, yesterday I did Florida and DC just to take a look at some of the jobs there. Specifically for me, I'm looking to kind of stay in the Intel arena where I am now, just because I've learned a few things, and I kind of want to compound on what I've already learned. So I clicked on those, and I saw some interesting jobs and a lot of good careers going on there. But I didn't see as many like Intel-related jobs or business Intel-related jobs as I hoped I'd find. But I'm not discounting the civilian side of the house either, because I want to explore those options as well. And there was actually a lot of stuff, particularly in Tampa, where I'm trying to hone in on for Florida and of course the DC area. So
I think there's a real opportunity there. I'll say a couple things. First of all, in your fields, you can go to pretty much any corporation in any industry. Can you mute for a second, Jeff? Sorry. You can go to any corporation and really look to your field. There are demands. There are demands across the private sector for Intel analysts, and you don't have to. You look at a company like Prudential or some of the banks. They require intelligence analysts. They're looking at information and they're trying to digest it in sound bites that they can appeal to their customers and their clients. You shouldn't limit yourself to the jobs just that appear in your MOS. In the skill that you learned can be translated to a lot of different industries. You will find concentrations around the bases and stations for Intel analysts, but what you'll find is you're going to be limited largely to defense contractors that work with those installations. And what I like to say to young people like you, you've had tens of thousands of dollars worth of training, right? You probably have a pretty good clearance, right? Probably TS, if I'm not mistaken. That in itself is worth $15,000 or $20,000, just that clearance or more. So you need to broaden your horizons. You need to look across the private sector. Veterans are 30% more likely to land a job in the federal government because there are incentives for them. They get a leg up against non-veterans. I'm fine with that. What we want to do is point out to younger people that they have a lot more opportunities than they think in the private sector, and an extraordinary amount of the opportunities they have exist, and you can make a lot more money with the skills you've learned. You just have to be a little bit more confident about it and not narrow your search. We have a coalition of 35 companies, and I would say of the 35, probably 30 need your skills. What we're working on in this map is we're in the infant stages. So in this fast track program, we are going to, the chamber has 1,600 local chambers of commerce, we have 600 trade associations, and we have 3 million businesses that are part of our federation. We're going to get as many of them as we can to populate this map. And when we do, and they can populate it for free, and veterans can go there for free. And when we do, this tool is going to blow everything else away, because there's only going to be one place that veterans have to go, or that transitioning service members have to go. And what we're going to do, if you look at a job, this map is going to be focused on 2 things. Geography. So if you click on a city, it's going to show you the 5 or 6 industries that are driving growth. But if you know, Jeff, right now that you want to go to energy or healthcare and use your skills, you'll have a way to look at those industries in particular. If you the right-hand box on that screen, you'll see there's a tool by industry. What we're going to focus on is, as people click on a job in a city or they click on a specific industry, we're going to build the tracks to those employment opportunities. So if you were going to the utilities community and you wanted to be an electrical technician, we will actually show step by step what you have to do to be an electrical technician. I'm not going to build this program where I say, okay, you were an electrical technician in the Navy, now you can go right to the job. I'm going to start with a basic infantryman and show all the steps to employment. What's really exciting is in the cities, we are going to build relationships with community colleges and the businesses there to develop the curriculum so they can go right into jobs. For you, specific advice for you is not to limit your horizons. You have extraordinary potential, not only to go right into a job, but to make a lot more money than you're probably looking at on some of the jobs right now. Jeff, I'm going to open it up to questions, but then I'm going to go back to you a little bit about what you're doing for resumes, what you're doing on networking. So while Jeff is on here, I'd like any other veterans who are listening who would like to chat with us to go on Google+. You can type in your questions, and I'm happy to answer them either on the Fast Track program or anything we're doing at Hiring Our Heroes. Or you can go on the YouTube site that's airing this live video now, and you can type in your questions there as well. So turning back over to you, Jeff, where are you on resume writing, networking? Do you have any mentors? Where are you on that?
Okay, so I have a resume, and I've been developing it over the past year or so, and I feel pretty happy with it. It's kind of a hybrid between like your standard, bulleted resume that you see coming out of the military. And it's kind of fused together with more of the civilian style where it's paragraphs and things of that nature so that it's easy to look at for both sides of the house. I've given it to, one or two civilian companies, and I've also shared it with, several contracting companies, and I've gotten great feedback, so I feel like that's pretty shored up. As far as networking goes, I've made a few contacts within some of the defense contracting firms. A VP or two just kind of reached out to him, got general advice. But basically, it's on me to kind of make a decision on what exactly I want to do, because when I speak to these people, they tell me what I can do from their point of view. But when it comes to me knowing exactly where to turn, I know I want to be involved in some sort of intelligence on some level, but I'm unable to articulate exactly my arena that I feel like I would be the happiest in, and that's kind of hard to do with a civilian company because they don't know exactly how to translate military intelligence skills to the jobs that they're posting. So that's my main worry is communicating with them effectively.
Well, you've given me a bunch of stuff to talk about, so I want to touch on them kind of on point. The first thing I want to talk about is the resume writing. So as we looked at the Fast Track map and dealing with this whole idea of helping service members make an informed decision about where the jobs are and who's hiring, we see that as a fundamental challenge for transitioning service members post 9/11, which is why they have much higher unemployment than their peers. We also see that as a serious problem for post 9/11 veterans under the age of 25. It's a huge issue. There's 29% unemployment. I think they have two challenges. One is this idea that they're making a decision of the heart and not making an informed decision about where the jobs are and who's hiring. Secondly, they have a similar problem to what you have, is this whole idea of personal branding. This is really important because I don't see you as just an intel analyst. I see you as someone who has leadership experience in management, who's been accountable for equipment. You've gotten awards, Jeff. You've gotten personal awards in your time that set you above your peers. You have certain ratings, like you achieved against your peers. Maybe you were been in the top 10% all the time. You've held leadership billets, maybe at a junior rank. So again, I think people are focused too much on their MOS, and I've been at dozens of hiring fairs. When I talk to younger people that were leaving the Marine Corps in my last job as a Marine, they don't know how to sell themselves. They don't know how to tell a story that's going to make them a better hire to an employer or a better prospect to an employer than a person who has a college degree, because that looks well on paper. What we need to do is to help people with their own personal brand. So we're developing a technology called the Personal Branding Toolkit. This is going to be a key program going forward for us, because I don't think we should fit a square peg into a square hole. And I don't think people should just talk about their MOS and hang their hat on that. You've done a lot more in your military service than a lot of people that went to college for 4 years while you were serving your country. And we got to get our hands around that. So we've done a couple things. Back in August, we launched the initiative at our hiring fairs, and we have Dakota Meyer, who's a Medal of Honor recipient, talking about his own challenges with employment and building a resume and how he could not talk to employers. We have him go around the country doing these things, and we also handed out a guide, which we have on our site, called the Personal Branding Guide. And it gives you these points on how to develop an elevator pitch to talk to employers. In March, we are launching this toolkit, and there'll be an ability for you. You'll see 5 pictures of a service member, each service represented. You're going to be able to click on your service, the picture of the person, and it's going to ask you a series of questions, but not just what your MOS is. We'll start with that, but then you'll have the opportunity to talk about your awards and your deployments and your personal billets that you held and the leadership schools that you attended. And it will spit out a resume, a 1 to 2 page resume that's very tight, that has language that HR managers are looking for. And one of the other things that we're building into technology is the ability to say that my service is equivalent to a bachelor's degree. Listen, if you took all the school that you had as an intelligence analyst and you married that up against a course curriculum, you have at least an associate's degree, if not a bachelor's degree, without going to any civilian higher education institution. Your resume, in some cases, will get vetted out if you don't have a 4-year degree. I'm not going to accept that. I'm going to make employers adjust to a wraparound in our system, which is, yeah, I have the equivalent of a bachelor's degree. At least your resume is then considered, because on some of these online systems, they won't even look at your resume if it doesn't have the words bachelor's degree in it because it's pulled out. This personal branding initiative is going to allow people to write down it uses the TurboTax technology. You know how easy it is to do your taxes on TurboTax. It makes it very simple to punch in keyword or punch in military jargon, and then you'll have a resume on the other side that will be appealing to HR managers. So we encourage you to start using that in March. The other question I would ask you, do you have a LinkedIn profile set up?
Yes, I do have a LinkedIn profile, and I find that's probably one of the easier ways to get a hold of hiring managers. Whether they respond or not is kind of a different story, because sometimes I feel like if I try to get a hold of people through LinkedIn, I'm either referred to somebody below them or they don't respond. So one of my issues is actually, once the resume is in place and it looks, decently good as far as I'm concerned, how can I break that barrier to get an interview to explain myself? Because it's hard with every single company to spit out a resume and then have it work its way through the pipeline in order to get that interview, which I feel is like my #1 sell, and I can't get to that point.
That's great. So 2 things in reply. One, we're trying to work with LinkedIn to help them develop more robust networks for veterans by industry. I think if you look at our map and the challenges, we want veterans not just to connect with someone on LinkedIn and send a general resume. We want them to focus their resume on a specific industry. The other thing that we're doing is we're going to launch an e-mentor platform. We did this for spouses. We are going to drive as many people as we know in the private sector to be mentors. And we're going to have them specify the industry that they're in and what their expertise in. And listen, if I can get 1,000 people online in this e-mentor platform that have intelligence analyst experience that made the transition already, and they're in 300 companies across America, and you can connect with them, it's game over. You don't have to worry about doing the legwork for you. Do I want to entitle every veteran, enable them in such a way where we're handing them the job? No, you got to do some work, right? You got to roll up your sleeves. You got to listen to what you got to use the tools that people are giving you. This is not an entitlement. This isn't charity, but we want the tools to exist. And the e-mentor platform that we built for spouses is relatively new, but we like the program because it's not this, you have to go to lunch with someone or you have to do 3 meetings and you have to have this self-assessment. We want people just to connect, because you may not want to talk to a mentor for 3 days. You may just want a little bit of advice, and this e-mentor platform that we built for spouses and for veterans will have that. I'm going to take a question real quick, Jeff, and then we'll come back to you with make some closing remarks and see if there's anything else that we can help you with. I got one idea that I'll come back to you with. First question is from William Gilbert. He asked, are there any media jobs that were discussed yesterday going to be posted as part of the Fast Track program? That's a great question, William, and I've got a great answer. First of all, I want to point people to the YouTube video. If they didn't get to see that panel yesterday, I'm very proud of being able to participate with Bob Woodruff and who else was it, James?
Martha Raddatz.
And Martha Raddatz from ABC. I had a mind meld there. So, we had a great panel yesterday. Go to YouTube, take a look at it. But the question that William asked is very poignant to what we're doing. And the fact is, we are now working with the entertainment and media industry to build a specific track on the Fast Track program that will be up and running in March when we get some of the first tracks up and running. We're also working with General Electric and their Get Skills to Work initiative with the National Association for Manufacturing. We're looking to work with Troops to Energy, which has another program on the utilities industry. But I think there's real opportunities there, but we will be building an entertainment and media track on the Fast Track program. So great question, William. One more question from Jonathan Williams. What are some simple programs out there to help you develop a resume? LinkedIn.com/veterans is ready. Free job seeker plus profile for veterans. So we are in conversations with LinkedIn, to your point, Jonathan, but if your timeline allows, I would suggest you use the tool that we'll have up and running with the help of Dakota Meyer and Toyota Motor Company by the end of March. And that technology is going to be very robust, and it's going to be one of a kind. And I think there's a good opportunity there. So we will be looking to bring LinkedIn to the profiles as well. Jeff, if you can come on, I'd like to offer a couple things to you. First of all, I think that you should send your resume to me. I'm happy to take a look at it and maybe make some introductions myself. I don't like to do that on the air here because I'll get requests from a bunch of people, but that's how this program was founded. I enjoy doing it. We got to do this one veteran at a time, one city at a time, and it takes people who have already made a successful transition to take their brother or sister by the arm and do it with them. The one other thing I want to point out to Jonathan and to you is on this VetNet site, there are 3 different tracks, right? There is a basic training track. There are classes offered on there with an organization called Hire Heroes USA. We're going to get more and more involved. Our personal branding toolkit will be involved on that as well. It's called the basic training track. You'll have an opportunity to get classes on resume and interview techniques there, and you should tune in. I mean, they're not giving as pointed advice, but that general advice can help in some ways too. And it doesn't hurt to spend 30 minutes of your time doing that. For vets that are interested in starting a small business, there's an entrepreneur track. A little bit harder for people like Jeff and other younger vets who are getting out. They don't have the capital built up to start a business. We believe that the Career Connections track is the right place to start. The last thing is there is a VetNet resource library on VetNet HQ. We are going to post resources on there like the Fast Track map, but there'll be other tools and guidebooks that are published there, and these are available for free 24 hours a day. Some people ask me, are we doing this to kind of supersede what the government's doing? We're not. I think the re-engineering of the Transition Assistance Program in DoD is important. What people have to remember, there are 2.2 million veterans who have left the armed forces since 9/11/01, and we need to have these tools out there for them as well. Will transitioning service members like Jeff use it? Absolutely. But the private sector and organizations like Hiring Our Heroes, which is one of the largest nonprofits on in the veteran space, will innovate. And whatever we do will complement what the Department of Defense is doing, just like the jobs map, which uses their Vets Job Bank to populate. So Jeff, any other questions or issues for us that you'd like to bring up before we close the panel?
Actually, before I spit out my last question here, thanks for hosting this hangout here. A lot of good information. I really appreciate what you guys do because I feel like I can reach out to somebody and have at least listening and some advice as to how to move on. in the civilian world. But my last question here, I know we started to touch a little bit on networks and getting certain resources together as far as social resources in order to break those barriers down and hammer down those interviews. As far as using LinkedIn and things like that, I'm barely scratching the surface. So I feel like a lot of vets would benefit from tips, advice, any sort of inroads as to how to network in general. Because I feel like once that gets taken care of, some of the resume stuff and the little fine details kind of take care of themselves after you've introduced yourself to folks and made a good impression and really solidified your position.
You're absolutely right. For my own transition, I was very lucky to have a mentor who helped me down there. And I went right into a job the day after I took off uniform. Listen, I retired as a lieutenant colonel after 20 years in the Marine Corps. My situation is a little bit different. If you look at our programs, it's not geared towards people like me. I didn't need the help. You're absolutely right. You need it. We have our own LinkedIn group for hiring our heroes. It's growing every day. You should become part of that. And now you have someone. So you've networked right now by being part of this because you took advantage of the tools that are out there. We've met, and I'm going to help you. And younger vets have to reach out to their uncles and their aunts and their cousins and people they may have grown up with who have been successful in the private sector and not be afraid to ask for help. We also need to do a better job across the veteran space for people like me who are out there to offer up our help. And, we'll get there. Our program is only 2 years old, but right now, I think the best solution is we have tools like LinkedIn, like Google, like Facebook out there. You got to be bold and think of everyone that may be able to help you and not be afraid to ask them for advice and guidance. You're going to be one leg. Listen, we've already had people on some of our industry panels type in a question and get directly referred to a company in the energy industry. So these things, as they become more robust and more people like you come to follow us, if we could grow this out to a couple 100,000 vets, it could really be a game changer for the community. And we need you to get the word out too. The only way to make these things better is by vets or transitioning service members talking about the tools and helping us make them better. Because a lot of times it's not the companies. The companies want to access veterans. The companies want to access transitioning service members, but there are a lot of roadblocks for them too. And our goal is to open up the pipeline. So I want to thank you, Jeff, for joining us. You did a fantastic job. We'll get you on another one soon. And what I'd like to do is, for all the vets who are watching or interested in being on this, make sure you connect with us on Career Connections. We'll open it up to 3 or 4 people. We'll do a deeper dive into all the issues. You can ask me the hard questions. I'm not afraid to answer, and if I don't know the answer, I'll make it up. So appreciate everyone joining. Again, thank you, Jeff, for your service. I think you're going to be in good stead. Please stay connected to me on Google+, and we'll work together to make your transition seamless.
All right, thanks, Kevin. Thanks, James.
All right.